big one that we don't even think about for bloating. Snacking throughout meals is a surefire way to stay bloated. Why? It comes to the migrating motor complex. This is the housekeeper of our small intestine that propels food down the digestive tract and helps clean you out. But it's activated every 3 to 4 hours and only after a food-fasted state. So snacking is a surefire way to disrupt this mechanism. How many times have you or someone you know said that they're bloated? We all have felt that uncomfortable pressure in our stomachs, as if something is pushing from the inside out, right? Sometimes you're not hungry, or you feel kind of yucky overall. You may have some heartburn. You definitely are gassy. You don't feel energetic. You don't feel energized. And certainly, you just don't feel like yourself overall. But the thing is, this is common. According to the Cleveland Clinic, between 10 to 25% of people out there, otherwise healthy, complain of occasional abdominal bloating. And as many as 75% describe their symptoms as moderate to severe. And about 10% say they experience it regularly. Now, if you've been diagnosed with IBS, you have it as much as 90% of the time. So why the bloating? What's the cause of abdominal discomfort? Now, it's rare that bloating is a sign of a serious disease like an obstruction or cancer. But when you are bloated, it's something to really pay attention to, especially if it's happening over and over and over. It's important to first understand what the heck's going on. Bloating is gas in the abdomen. When we have a mix of the air we swallow and a mix of bacterial fermentation, we get bloating. And if your digestive tract ain't moving, the gas in there is not either. And then you manifest symptoms and you get uncomfortable. You feel the pressure. You have some gas that's stuck in there, but then finally moves and you're burping or you're passing gas or you get some heartburn and you just don't feel good. So what are some of the causes of bloating? I just mentioned swallowing air, major cause. Stress, huge cause, especially for IBS and SIBO. Low stomach acid, another cause for SIBO. A lot of you menstruating get bloated. Right? And this is very common. You say, hey, Dr. G, I'm going through my period now and I have some really bad bloating. This is likely due to hormones like estrogen and water retention. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Constipation, another huge cause of bloating. Overeating, especially not mindfully eating. Poor diet, of course, and disconnected to how food affects you. So we're going to talk about some of the causes of bloating when it comes to food. So rich, fatty foods are a big issue for a lot of people. They cause bloating because they're very slow to digest. Fat is the macronutrient that takes the longest to break down. So for a lot of us, we're sensitive to it and we get bloated very easily. What about cruciferous vegetables? Kale, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, right? Garlic, onions. Any of you hearing these foods and touching your stomach and going, no, I can't eat those? Well, it's probably because of the sulfur content. These are sulfur-rich foods, which are great for detoxification, not great for bloating. So a lot of you are intolerant to those foods, as am I. So I really avoid those as much as possible, unfortunately, as much as I try. What else causes bloating? Too much fiber. If you're eating too much fiber or you're introducing fiber too fast, you're going to inevitably get bloated. And why? Is because your bacteria of your gut are not acclimating and adapting to the increase in fiber. So you have to go really slow, about 5 grams, take it easy, and start building on it. Beans, legumes, fiber-rich foods. We know that. I remember singing the song, beans are good for your heart, when I was young. And that's what happens. Beans, legumes, they're notorious. Again, if you're eating these foods, eat them in small amounts and slowly introduce them over time. Certain fruits, actually. Apples and pears, definitely known to bloat people who have a very sensitive stomach, so be aware of how these foods affect you. Dairy, big cause of bloating, huge actually. 68% of the world is lactose intolerant, right? If you are African American or Asian consuming dairy, you have 75% chance that you're lactose intolerant. So maybe moving away from dairy or reducing it exponentially. We eat too much dairy as it is. Really removing it or moving away is going to make a big change if you're bloated, if you're suffering from any of these issues and still eating dairy. Keep that as one of the main things you want to watch out for. What are some of the habits that lead to bloating? Overeating. We as Americans eat too much and do not eat mindfully. And for that reason, our digestive signals are lagging behind our logical wants when we eat. We eat fast and we end up eating too much, and we're not eating mindfully. We gotta eat mindfully. Relax the nervous system. Be safe, feel safe, so your enteric nervous system in the gut is shooting out acetylcholine and giving you the signals to your intestines to start moving, getting more blood, shooting out the chemicals to break down and absorb food. This is only if you're feeling safe and eating mindfully. Making sure you're chewing your food, big one. If you're bloated, ask yourself, am I even chewing my food? If you're talking and eating and forgetting to chew, you're swallowing air and putting more of the burden on your stomach. Chew your food, pulverize it, mush it up, then swallow it. What are some of the other habits leading to bloating? Mouth breathing. Huge reason why we are bloated. One of the main ways we are bringing in air to our digestive tract is by mouth breathing. And you may not notice it, but you may be doing it all day, every single day. Are you waking up burpy, passing gas, feeling bloated in the morning? You probably were mouth breathing through the night. Snacking, big one that we don't even think about for bloating. Snacking throughout meals is a surefire way to stay bloated. Why? It comes to the migrating motor complex. This is the housekeeper of our small intestine that propels food down the digestive tract and helps clean you out. But it's activated every 3 to 4 hours and only after a food-fasted state. So snacking is a surefire way to disrupt this mechanism. And when you disrupt it, you're promoting the growth of bacteria in the small intestine. And when you promote the growth of bacteria in your small intestine, you're increasing fermentation, gas, and bloating. We call it SIBO. I call it a surefire way to get bloated. Also, go on a walk after meals, a light walk, but go on a walk. It's been shown to help stimulate digestion, moving blood, moving lymph, and creating a parasympathetic state. What else? What are some food remedies that really help with bloating? Some of my favorite foods to combat bloating, foods like papaya, avocado, lemons, ripened bananas, watermelon for some, cucumbers. One thing we need to pay attention to are herbs. Herbs are a major key in helping with bloating. There is a class of herbs called carminative herbs, and they are gas-relieving herbs. So they either prevent gas from building up or help with the expulsion of gas. Ginger, turmeric, rosemary, peppermint, cloves, sage, thyme, fennel. You ever go to an Indian restaurant, you walk out, there's fennel there? That's because they're helping move gas and bloating. Lemon balm, chamomile, cumin, coriander, very important to utilize all of these carminative herbs. Herbal teas, right? They have gas and bloating teas. Peppermint, fennel as a basis, and then other carminative herbs that are really helpful. Avoid chewing gum and sucking candies. These are going to bring in air to your system and keep you bloated. You may want to follow a low FODMAP diet for the short term. Low FODMAP means fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. These are short-chain carbohydrates or sugars that the bacteria in your small intestine, if they are there, love. And they'll eat them up, they'll ferment them, you'll get bloated. So a low FODMAP diet is a really good short-term move if you have bloating, but you got to get to the root of the SIBO, right? SIBO can be due to stress, psychosomatic, low stomach acid, really important. I'll talk about it a little bit later. Mouth tape, really, really important. So make sure you're taping your mouth if you're breathing through your mouth during the day and when you're sleeping. Movement, going for a walk, exercising, very important, especially if constipation is playing the role in your bloating. So making sure you're drinking water, moving, use a squatty potty for the Lord's sake. It's going to help you because what happens is your sigmoid colon is going to be in the right place where we evolutionarily know that we're going to defecate, and it's opening up the space so you're actually having a complete voidance and not incomplete voiding. Really important if you're constipated. Fiber, it's soluble and insoluble. Again, constipation, a huge, huge cause of bloating. Putting your legs up on the wall, maybe a blanket under your back is really helpful. It's a helpful pose, right? To really get blood flowing and getting blood to the gut to start moving it. Also look up some yoga poses that help stimulate the abdominal cavity for bloating. For some people, even drinking kombucha is really helpful. Some I say don't drink carbonated drinks, it's gonna make you more bloated. I know if I'm bloated, I feel like gas is stuck. If I drink kombucha, I'll start burping. Go back to that kombucha review we had. I was burping left and right, and that's because I had some bloating, and the kombucha helped liberate all of those gases. Interesting, another thing I found is, and what a lot of people aren't talking about, is actually the importance of abdominal tone. right? There's an increase in bloating in those with poor abdominal tone. And some theorize it's in large part due to just a weak overall abdominal wall. In my experience, it's not always the case, but it's worth knowing. So maybe do some sit-ups. Now, if you bloat, especially on your period, this is because estrogen is elevated and you're retaining fluid. So it's important to balance that estrogen. I mentioned cruciferous vegetables. If you can tolerate those, increase those in your diet. Bring in broccoli sprouts to help metabolize and break down those carcinogenic forms of estrogen and just balance your overall estrogen. You also want to make sure you're having B vitamin-rich foods or supplementing B vitamins. And for sure, magnesium. So important for estrogen detoxification. You can take in magnesium orally and also complement it with an Epsom salt bath. These are ways that are going to help balance your estrogen and get to the upstream cause of fluid retention, which is causing you bloating. Some supplements I love, there's bloat formulas out there. Gaia has a nice herbal formula. Go on Swell Score, you're going to find some really good herb formulas for bloating, some of my favorite ones that I handpicked. Homeopathics, a lot of you, I don't talk much about homeopathics. I've seen them work. Lycopodium, Carbovegetalis, Nux vomica, Arsenicum. Read on your own the character of these homeopathics for bloating and see which one describes your particular bloat. Probiotics absolutely can help. I love Thrive and Megaspore. You can find those on Swell Score again. Peppermint capsules, amazing for bloating and passing gas. And I just mentioned Epsom salt baths, really good. And lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't say the psychosomatic component to bloating. When you think about that part of the body, there's two major emotions that live in the gut area. Usually when I'm working with people and they say, I'm really sad, and they touch their stomach, and I go, where? And they go, right here in my stomach. It's usually not sadness. Underlying that sadness is usually fear, pure fear, or anger. So if you are driven by these emotions subconsciously, and there's a psychosomatic component, especially if you've been diagnosed with IBS, which there is no medication or supplement for, we need to start looking at what the role of emotions are doing to drive that tension in the digestive system, which is leading to poor movement of the gut, which is affecting our nervous system, which is reciprocating the sympathetic response and tone in our gut. So fear and anger, go do an emotional release because it's going to help move that energy. So at the very least, the psychosomatic component can be liberated and addressed. There you go. A lot of us are bloated. If it's one thing that I do suffer with, it's bloating. I have a very sensitive stomach. I was diagnosed with IBS in 2007. And some of the things that have really helped me, I just put out here to all of you. So try it out.